picture this. You're stranded in a desolate landscape of ice and snow. You're part of a small team of researchers that have been stationed at an isolated outpost in Antarctica. Your otherwise boring morning of losing to a computer at chess is interrupted by a Norwegian helicopter who's trying to shoot down a dog, and then it explodes. And that's just the beginning of the strange and horrific things that are gonna happen to you in the next 48 hours. My name is Kyrie, and welcome back to Flight's Fantasy, a show where we look at different science fiction and fantasy movies and ask, what do they mean? And today we're gonna talk about The Thing, that does indeed have this really cool hat. The Thing is a sci-fi masterpiece made by the same guy who came up with Michael Myers and Halloween, John Carpenter. If that scenario kind of sounds like the game Among Us, that's because this movie is indeed like half the DNA of Among Us. And the other half is like at least partially the movie Alien or that series, but we'll get to that series in another video. The Thing is a movie that doesn't rely exclusively on jump scares to be horrific.
Clear!
It's a masterclass in how to build suspense into bone-chilling dread. But how does it do that? Why is this considered one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies of all time? And how did this movie actually help my love life? Let's find out. So let's go back to that scenario in the beginning. That's exactly what happens at the beginning of this movie. We're stuck with a group of men in an isolated outpost in Antarctica. A Norwegian helicopter comes in, tries to shoot down this dog, explodes, and then they take in the mysterious dog. It's only when they investigate the Norwegian outpost to see what the heck is going on that they realize that trouble might be brewing here. Enter Kurt Russell as R.J. McCready, a character whose growing mistrust and resolve in the face of paranoia and desperation becomes the anchor of the movie. This is actually the third collaboration between Kurt Russell and John Carpenter, as they had done a couple of movies previously, including Escape from New York. Together they produce a character that is heroic, yet still relatable and deeply human. He's a guy who doesn't want to be a leader or hero. In fact, he's kind of just thrust into that role. So the team investigates weird alien stuff going on at the Norwegian base and how it's totally wiped out at this point. It looks like something really bad happened there. And then they find the mysterious dog assimilating another dog and killing all the other dogs and just generally being really nasty, and they realize that they might be in a pickle. Let's pause here. There are a couple of things that make this scene so much fun. First, dogs. Specifically, our Thing dog. While he only appears in the first quarter of the movie or so, he really set the tone and gave us the impression that the Thing is way more calculating and intelligent than we could imagine at first glance. The dog was played by a half-wolf dog named Jed, and surprisingly, this was his first movie. In the director's commentary, John Carpenter and Kurt Russell are constantly giving Jed props.
This dog, who is a tremendous acting dog, Jed, he comes in and he's pausing at all times. One of the great parts of working with Jed, the dog, was that once he got to know the crew, you could do a dolly shot with him and he would not look at the camera or the director or the crew. And here comes the dog. This is quite an amazing shot. He's doing this all by himself. The dog hesitates at the door. He's not looking at the camera. He looks in, he stops, he checks out somebody in another room. He pauses, then moves. He doesn't look at us as we pull back.
Look at that, yeah.
Then he stops and stares.
Look at that.
Waits, and in he goes.
And he would make choices as though he understood the context of the scene that he was working in. Like throughout most of the scenes, the almost deliberate pauses that he makes, the unnatural stillness when he's laying down, the body language, the way he never looks at the camera, that's all Jed. He wasn't trained to do that. That was all a dog, properly acting. He went on to star in 3 more movies, including the titular character in the 1991 movie White Fang. He died around the age of 18 in 1995, and he was such a good boy. Thank you, Jed. And the other thing that makes this scene and really the entire movie so much fun is the practical effects. If you're looking at science fiction movies today, you're likely to find a slew of movies that are very fast-paced and very also loud and poorly mixed, and also with a lot of CGI of varying degrees of quality, we'll say. And the problem with CGI is that it can come off as really flat or very obviously fake. And it takes a lot of time and money to even come close to being believable. But the thing takes a different path. The gooey, pulsating nightmare creatures that appear in the thing feel almost disturbingly real. And that's because they are real. Because CGI wasn't super advanced yet, Carpenter opted for groundbreaking practical effects instead. And most of these grotesque, twisted nightmares are courtesy of Rob Bottin, a legendary practical effects, special effects person whose work here left a permanent mark on horror cinema. Like, the transformations in the thing are grotesque, but also just marvelous. Just so awful and amazing at the same time. These aren't just cheap scares. They're meticulously crafted little masterpieces that can creep you out long after the credits roll. And the fun fact cherry on top of all of this is that Rob Bottin was only 22 years old when he was working on the thing. His dedication to this project was so intense that he worked himself and exhausted himself to the point of needing to be hospitalized. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. So the thing, trying to assimilate the dogs, not great. But then they stumble into the thing mid-assimilation of a character named Bennings, and things get a lot worse. Once they realize that the thing can be any of them, the real paranoia begins.
If you were all these things, then you'd just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won. There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours. We're gonna find out who's who.
Is a character like Blair the Doctor
Where's Blair?
acting the way he is because he's trying to stop the thing from spreading to the rest of the world?
I'll kill you!
Or is it because he's a thing and he's destroying the radio and the helicopters so that way he can pick off all the characters one by one?
Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired.
Blair destroying their only means of communication and transportation adds an extra element of danger on top of everything else. The Antarctic base itself becomes an antagonist. The cold, the isolation, it's in the middle of winter. There's no help coming and there's no escape. And who can you trust when anyone could be the thing? The setting adds to the claustrophobia and the sense of vulnerability. This hellish paranoia is unfolding in the middle of nowhere. No one is safe, no one can be trusted. We, the viewers, are just as clueless as the characters as to who's human and who's not, and when. John Carpenter, the director himself, mentioned in the commentary that he doesn't know who is a thing at what time.
We just didn't know. We said, do you know if you're the thing? Does it know if it knows that you know you're the thing? And on and on and on.
And here's a lesser known detail about how the thing operates. The creature assimilates its victims physically, sure. But it also assimilates them psychologically. Imagine not only your body being taken over, but your memories and your emotions too.
Wow! Okay!
Carpenter and Russell brought up the idea that the thing might be simple, but it gets deeper the more that you think about it. They brought up several interesting questions, like, would an assimilated creature know that it's a thing? Would it act normal? Would other things realize that an assimilated creature is a thing if they're all individual things? Furthermore, would assimilated things have any humanity left inside of them? Mac devises a clever test to see who's a thing and who's human. Because every part of the thing is independent, each part of the thing will do what it can to survive. So, if they take blood samples from everyone and then touch it with, say, burning hot metal, the blood itself will react in a way to try to defend itself and survive. So they do just that. They take blood samples from everyone and they find a thing among them, all right. What started as a crew of 12 men is being whittled down through extraterrestrial means or plain boring human murder until there are just 5 left. And then the power gets cut.
Six hours, it'll be 100 below in here.
Well, that's suicide.
Not for that thing.
He wants to freeze now. He's got no way out of here. Just wants to go to sleep in the cold until the rescue team finds it.
The Thing's plan here is to freeze the remaining humans to death, so that way it can go back into the cold and go back asleep, and then in spring, when some sort of other help or rescue comes, it can wake up again, and it can spread, and essentially destroy mankind. But Mac decides that if they're gonna die anyway, they're gonna kill the Thing, if it's the last thing they do. They're heroes on a doomed mission. The survivors, battered and broken, are forced to make a stand against a creature that could be any of them. The tension is palpable and the stakes couldn't be higher. The film's use of lighting is another element that adds to the tension and atmosphere of this movie. In the beginning, we have a lot of muted, desaturated colors. Typically, it's pretty normal or at least natural lighting. But then about a third of the way through the movie, we start getting interesting lighting choices. When they find the nearly assimilated Bennings thing, that's the first time that they realize how quickly and accurately the Thing can assimilate a person. The scene is bathed in the pink and red of the flare, which kind of becomes the calling card for the Thing and the danger that it presents. By the end, we're dealing almost exclusively with dramatic blue, black, and flare red lighting. It contrasts those earlier scenes, and it shows just how dire the paranoia and danger of the situation have become. We see the remaining survivors be picked off by the Thing, and over 50 people were operating the final creature, monster, nightmare that we see. But MacReady manages to blow up the base until he's surrounded by just fiery remains.
Fuck you too!
Instead of building and blowing up a whole new set, after they blew up the American outpost, they then used the burned remains to film the Norwegian outpost stuff that we see in the beginning of the movie. Waste not, want not. Resourceful filmmaking. The ending of The Thing is just excellent. A masterstroke. MacReady and Childs, one of the survivors who had briefly gone missing, are staring at each other as the outpost burns around them. In a couple of hours, anyone who's human is going to be dead. We're left with a lot of questions and no easy answers. Like, who's human? What happens after we fade to black? And what's the fate of humanity after all of this? The ambiguity forces us to confront the fear of the unknown, which is perhaps one of the most terrifying things of all. The film also explores themes like paranoia, trust, and survival in the face of unimaginable, unspeakable horror. Even the haunting score by Ennio Morricone, despite this being one of his lesser-known works in his wide catalog of mostly westerns, this score is known for being one of his most effective and memorable ones. Its minimalist yet unsettling melodies perfectly complement the film's overall atmosphere of dread. The ending was also different from John Carpenter's original idea. While the current ending he kind of views as like an ending from a tragic war movie where the heroes save someone or save the world despite the grave cost, the studios wanted him to play around with an ending that didn't have Childs come in. So it would have just been cut to black after Kurt Russell is looking around at all the fiery outpost. John Carpenter also, throughout shooting, wanted to play with this idea that maybe Kurt Russell, maybe MacReady is a thing, and we, the audience, can't trust him. But then the studio was like, nah, you can't do that. John Carpenter also didn't want the movie to end with the two men like burning each other alive or killing each other. And there was some talk about like, oh, maybe the ending can have like a helicopter come in.
The studio originally wanted to find out what would happen if you didn't reintroduce Childs, so they had me preview a scene where you cut right there.
And
it
wasn't there
didn't
some
make-
talk about a helicopter comes in? They've arrived, and you don't know
Yeah,
that.
that wasn't it, guys. We have to end it with our guy.
So Kurt Russell came up with the final line for MacReady.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while, see what happens?
Like many great movies, The Thing wasn't really appreciated or loved in the same way that it is today upon the time of its release. And while there are a few reasons for this, most of it has to do with the cultural context at the time. So in 1982, the United States was in a severe economic recession, one that hadn't been as extreme or even seen since World War II, and one that wouldn't be beaten until 2020, with the pandemic. Anyway, in the middle of what are some really harsh financial years, the last thing that anybody wants to do is spend money to watch a movie and then leave feeling bummed out. The nihilism throughout the movie and the ambiguous but grim ending had a lot of people feeling just that, bummed out. And to juxtapose this movie, just a couple of weeks earlier, another alien movie had been released. It's called E.T. and it was by Steven Spielberg, and it was most well known for making everybody feel childlike wonder with aliens. It's a little bit different than that. The Thing may not have been a box office hit when it first came out, but it has become like a very well-loved cult classic. In 2011, a sequel that actually is a prequel was released, also creatively titled The Thing. Within the movie takes place just before the 1982 movie, and it has to do with the events at the Norwegian camp, like what the heck happened at the Norwegian camp exactly. So the thing about The Thing is that the 1982 Thing gives us everything we need to string the things that happened before the Thing started. The Norwegians find the Thing while digging in the ice, it assimilates almost everyone, it destroys their camp. The Thing fakes being a dog and sprints to the American camp with the seething Norwegians dying trying to hunt it down. So is this Thing missing something? Was there anything confusing to the point of springing a Thing offspring on us? I don't think so. But if you watch The Thing and you're like,
this was great and everything, but I really wish there was some more body horror and on-screen death,
then the 2011 movie might just be for you. It's a much more traditional monster movie than the original, and it's interesting to see one interpretation of how the Norwegian camp came to look the way that it did. Although I will warn you, not all, but some of the CGI has not aged very well. The influence of John Carpenter's The Thing can be seen in countless different movies and video games. Video games like Dead Space and The Last of Us use the themes of paranoia, isolation, and body horror. And there's a lesser known gem. In 2002, a video game titled, can you guess it? That's right, also The Thing, was released, and it's supposed to be a direct sequel and take place directly after the events of John Carpenter's The Thing. No, I will not be talking about it. I don't recognize it as canon. I don't see it. I've never heard of it. I've never played it, have no intention of playing it or looking up anything of it, because I don't think The Thing needs anything after the credits. Like, the questions are fun to ponder. That's the whole point of ambiguous endings. But for what it's worth, the 2002 video game received mixed reviews, but for hardcore fans, it stood as another chance to be in the world of The Thing. While lots of things have referenced The Thing itself has also Easter eggs and hidden references to other classic sci-fi horror movies. For example, can you find the references to The Fly or Alien in the background of this movie? If you do, or other movies, let me know in the comments below. One of the many things that I like and find interesting about this movie is that there are a couple of ways that the movie tells you exactly what's going to happen in the beginning scene. The first way it does this is that if you speak Norwegian, this movie was spoiled so hard for you just right off the bat. The second way that it totally spoils or kind of lets you know what's going to happen is with Mac. In the beginning, he's playing a computer in a game of chess. At first, he has it in a position where he thinks he's going to win. But then the computer makes a move and has him in a checkmate. Mac takes a glass of whiskey and pours it into the computer hard drive, causing it to have a little explosion. This directly mirrors exactly what happens in this movie. He has it in a position where they think they're going to win. They'll be able to smoke it out and kill it from where it's hiding. But then the thing cheats, and their doom is all but guaranteed. So what does Mac do? He destroys the base to ensure the thing doesn't escape. Making the thing wasn't easy. When they were on location, the harsh conditions pushed the director and the crew and the actors to their limit. It was cold all the time. The practical effects were groundbreaking, yes, but also very time-consuming, and some scenes, individual scenes, took days to film. Even when they weren't on location, they were in a studio set. They were working on a refrigerated set, so it was still freezing cold, and they used misters to get that misty, foggy effect. And on top of all that, there was a lot of smoke from the flares that they used to light the scenes. So they were freezing, kind of moist all the time, and also dealing with smoke in their face.
Nice.
There were even rumors about arguments between Carpenter and the studio about the film's bleak tone and graphic content, which is reflected in the compromise of the ending of the movie. Kurt Russell shared in the commentary,
because everybody got sick from those misters and from being cold. It got to be a grind, didn't it? This got to be a little bit of a grind with the flares and the smoke and the cold.
This was tough.
Despite how physically uncomfortable and unpleasant this movie was to film, throughout the director's commentary, you can really hear John Carpenter and Kurt Russell reflecting on the entire experience really positively. The camaraderie between the entire production crew was just great. And they both reminisce, and you can just tell how proud of it they both are. In fact, John Carpenter has said that this is one of his favorite movies that he's ever made. So the harsh filming condition does pretty well reflect what their characters would be going through, but everyone took it extremely seriously, and you can tell that dedication and that serious way that they all worked together, it shows off, and the movie's way better for it. Maybe that's why I like the movie so much. It's a testament to the power of good storytelling, the kind of storytelling that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Part of that power comes from not telling the audience everything. You don't have to spell everything out. The audience is left to fill in the blanks, and the power of imagination can be way more terrifying than anything that they show on screen. So the next time you're looking for a fun, scary, dread-inducing movie, give The Thing a try, and look out for those hidden references too. One last fun fact for the road. So apparently, on the Amundsen Scott South Pole Base, an actual Antarctic research station, there's a tradition. On the first full day of winter, after the last flight out of the base is left for the winter, they have a double feature where they watch The Thing and The Shining. And if that's not good humor, I don't know what is. Thank you for diving into the icy world of The Thing with me. My name is Kyrie. This has been Flights of Fantasy, and until next time, I want you to live well and trust no one, not even that harmless-looking dog. And if you do decide to trust that harmless-looking dog, maybe bring a flamethrower just in case. Bye!